been frozen out.
Facing an extinction level event.
We don't fight this fight right now, you're not going to have black-owned media. I talk a lot about, on this show, I talk about resources, I talk about ownership, talk about what happens when we are able to change this dynamic. When you look at television, minorities make up a significant number of folks who watch television. You look at the Nielsen numbers. The numbers are dramatic. When you go to ownership, it's a whole different focus. And what you're now seeing more people of color, African Americans, Asian Americans, Latino, and others who understand the power of media and what it means when it comes to actually owning. And so here's a perfect example. Minorities account for less than 2% of all owning of U.S. TV stations, okay? There are currently 10 black-owned U.S. television stations nationwide, and there's a new deal that's actually happening right now where Standard General is trying to acquire TEGNA. It's about an $8.4 billion deal. There's been a lot of conversation back and forth. And what was interesting is Soo Kim was the managing partner and CIO of Standard General, has been battling folks who've been saying that he's not the right kind of minority. So you have this battle happening with the FCC and the Department of Justice. So what's really going on here? Soo Kim joins us right now in this exclusive interview. Glad to have you on the show, Soo.
Roland, thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure.
So let's. I'm trying to understand this. When you hear critics, they've actually said you're not the right kind of minority. How does that make you feel?
Well, I'm trying to go, what's the saying? When they go low, I go high. I'm trying to, look, I trust in the process. I trust that the regulators will see through that kind of sort of uncomfortably, I think just, statements that really have no say in the public discourse. But it's not great, it's not great. And look, what I've said from the beginning is I pointed out for the fact that our ownership and, me being the attributable owner of these TV stations would change the minority ownership landscape by a huge amount, and when I made that comment, we got these public comments by opposers on the FCC docket saying that, right, well, that's not what we meant when we meant minority ownership. That's not what we meant. And that's, yeah, I mean, that's, Roland, that sucks. I don't know what to say. It's not the world that I want to live in. And I don't really understand because I frankly, believe that we will, that we have a lot of good to do. So
when it comes to this, first of all, TEGNA owns a number of stations in markets with, first of all, a lot of African Americans. We're showing the map right here of those particular stations. And as a part of this, you have to also sell off some stations to satisfy requirements. There have been a number of other provisions that you have made, concessions made as well. You wanted this deal to close by the end of 2022. Obviously, it did not. What do you think now is the holdup? For people who don't understand, why is the Department of Justice and the FCC involved in this? Just explain to the people who don't know.
Sure. Look, it's just so as a matter of background. So TEGNA is actually the second largest local broadcaster by revenue. So it is a company that matters. It actually is, I think they paid somebody a lot of money to rename the company to a name that doesn't really mean a lot. But the company used to be called Gannett. And so when it owned a lot of newspapers and TV stations, the newspapers were spun out. And now it's just the TV stations. But
it was Gannett, but also Below, and then
for sure.
Yeah. So the reason I know Below well, because of course I still own a home in Dallas, and WFAA in Dallas is the #1 TV station and one of the top ABC affiliates in America. So.
Absolutely. This is a company that matters. Again, second largest local broadcaster by revenues. And it was actually kind of interesting because like some of the comments, like when I actually called out that comment of, well, maybe this is not the right kind of minority or this is not what it's meant by the civil rights movement, Yeah, when I called that out and said, well, what does that even mean? They sort of dug themselves in a deeper hole by saying, well, actually what we meant is that it doesn't make sense for one person to be the attributable owner of all of these stations. It should really be split up. And that comment doesn't make any sense to me either. So because Roland, I said that, like, wait, well, hold on a second here. You're saying that it's okay as if we have a few stations, but if we have too many, then that's a big problem. Or that there should be, like, lots of minorities owners and they should only have a few stations each. But if there's one person that owns all these stations, it can't be right. So, look, we again have looked through this stuff and tried to take the high road. But look, I mean, I think that this commentary is having some influence or impact in the regulatory process because this deal has taken a long time. We're in our I want to say our 11th month of review here, and so yeah, we have made concessions that basically address each of the concerns that have been put up. But there's been concerns about local newsrooms, jobs. There's been concerns about the possible negative consequences of synergies we have in our deal. And we've actually gone in and said, look, we're willing to address each of these concerns. What I would say is, look, what I hoped from the very beginning is that we'd be treated like everybody else. I would say that maybe that was too much to hope for, but we're still very optimistic that we've put together a series of responses that addresses each of the concerns that we've heard. And now, look, I think that we're still waiting. The latest set of changes, Roland, has now started a new comment process. So that'll be the third comment process in our deal. Mm-hmm. And so, look, we'll go through the comment process over the next few weeks. And if there's another series of, asks from us, we'll think about whether or not how we can deliver them. And look, we're here to get this deal done. We think it is important that we represent the kind of change that this industry needs so badly. TV is a very old media form that needs to evolve. And that's what we're doing because we've been in the space for a long time. We have a pretty good sense of how we need to evolve it and what we need to do for TV to be relevant for the next decade, the next century, really. And we're really excited to tackle that. So we want to get past these smaller objections. But right now, just so you know, just to answer your question, Roland, we've addressed, I believe, every verbalized concern and everything that was publicly, every public comment. I cannot address the fact that I might be the wrong minority for some, but again, through my own actions, I think we can address that.
Reverend Jesse Jackson, the senior Rainbow Push, released this letter, and he said, quote, after meeting with Soo Kim and upon careful and scrupulous review of his record on diversity and inclusion, my team and I wholeheartedly support the purchase of TEGNA. Soo Kim, being Korean American, is sensitive to the plight of racial justice, equity, and inclusion. And he said that it is my strong belief that Soo Kim will be committed to inclusion, which leads to growth in the America of our dreams. He will honor the spirit and the law, representing the best in American ideals. I talk a lot about the importance of partnerships, of joint ventures, of African Americans aligning with Asian Americans, Latinos, to understand our power. I talk about 2043. And for me, as a black content creator, as a owner of a black-owned media company, I understand how hard it is for us to get ad dollars, for us to be able to break through those barriers. And so, what is your vision, if you're able to close this deal, to provide opportunities for black content creators, black journalists, black-owned media companies?
Okay, there's so much there. Let me just pierce through. Let me almost work backwards on that question, Roland.
It's all good.
So what I would say is as follows, right? So look, this we're in the turnaround. So Stan General, my investment firm, is actually in the turnaround stressed company investing business. This is what we do. We get involved in businesses that really need to change, like could use a nudge forward. Change the ways they've been doing business, and television as an industry as a whole, but TEGNA specifically, needs a lot of evolution, and so that's what we're there to bring. Look, we believe that change isn't just about changing one person. It's actually, in some ways, I agree with petitioners in the sense that just just making sure, oh, we hired one person, everything's good, we check some, whatever. That doesn't do anything. What I believe is that in the end, every company, for it to be successful, needs to reflect its audience. And when I say the company needs to reflect its audience, I mean, that means that, the actual staff and the content generation needs to reflect its audience. That means the management needs to reflect its audience. That means the ownership and the board needs to reflect its audience. So, look, we've been doing this for a long time. And look, for the board and the officers of the company, that's relatively easy for a company like ours, that we have the ability when we invest to change that. And we've brought, one of the reasons why the Reverend Jackson, looked at our track record of having brought in more than 24 women and minorities into C-suites of, officers and directorships of public companies. We've done this over the last decade. And that's because we believe, not because we want to check boxes, but because the companies that reflect their audiences and their customer bases are just stronger and better businesses. So when it comes to media specifically, that means, Roland, that it's not just about hiring just a few people, but actually making sure that the community feels like that station reflects their voice, and that's going to take work. That means we have to, source our content differently. We need to go and make sure that, and obviously this speaks to our primary product, which is actually local news. But also, because there's so much airtime and the networks only provide, some programming per week, and per day, all the rest of that programming is up to us to fill. And we should fill it with content that matters for our local communities. And so, look, I think that when I look at some of these markets that we're in, I don't believe that currently the stations reflect its communities. And so I think that that's the opportunity. Like, for example, our station in Atlanta, obviously the demographics of Atlanta are very different than the demographics in Portland. And I think that the model of management for those stations have to be different. And we're ready to, bring the change the way we've done business in the past. And that's what's so exciting about this opportunity. That's why we think it is in the public interest. And I think that our ownership will not only see a change in the actual personnel at the stations, we're going to create more jobs, but the jobs are going to go to people who also reflect the audience and can also, I think reflect the content that the audience is looking for. That's actually the most important thing, because what you've done, is you've gone with your audience. You've gone from cable TV to digital media, and that's amazing. That's an amazing journey. And frankly, we need to start to incorporate that kind of entrepreneurialism, that kind of open thinking, that's forward-mindedness in our station group, because we do have the legacy assets, the incumbent advantages of the platform. But you know what? We're not doing anything with it. We're doing the old thing.
In fact, TEGNA used to produce, it was a morning show targeting black women, and it was produced by TEGNA, aired on their stations, and we ran it on TV One. It was later canceled, but that's a perfect example when you talk about reaching that customer base. And yes, for me, I'm like, hey, to be able to partner and to be able to say, hey, we have content, you have distribution, and then also when you talk about back in the relationships when it comes to reaching in these advertisers, because we get screwed by these ad agencies. They literally won't even give us the time of day, and that's the kind of thinking that has to take place. And I can tell you flat out, Sinclair ain't having that conversation with me. These other folks out here, they aren't doing that. And if you're African American, if you're Latino, you're getting locked out. And again, when you get locked out, this industry spends $322 billion a year on advertising. Black-owned media gets 0.5 to 1% of that. And again, so we want to explain what's happening economically, what's happening in black communities. We can point to lack of access to economics. And I tell people all the time, I'm not interested. People are like, well, we need access to capital. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not looking for a loan. I want a deal. I don't need a loan. I'm debt free. What I need is to be able to grow and build capacity. And so that's the thinking to me when you talk about being able to partner. Actually, we're talking with Soo Kim, Standard General, discussing the acquisition that they are hoping to close this year of TEGNA. We've got three of our panelists here. Randy Bryant Soo is a diversity, equity, and inclusion expert. So Randy, what's your question for Soo Kim?
I really want to almost apologize, although I have nothing to do with this, that someone made such a horrible statement to say that you were not the right minority. That's not only an inappropriate statement, that is an inflammatory statement. And I'm sure, as you know, structural racism is designed to pit minorities against one another. And so I would say that was a very strategic statement on someone's part. And I'm sorry that you're having to wade through those waters right now. What I'd like to know is, what are you going to do? I think you've outlined it pretty well now, but what are you going to do to ensure that as you are championing diversity, that you ensure that in all levels of your organization that is indeed diverse?
Yeah. Well, Randy, thank you for that, and thank you for the commentary. I almost had to hold my my tongue, because I understand exactly what it was, and you're 100% right that actually, look, I grew up in Queens. I'm an immigrant. And the nice thing about growing up in Queens is it's actually like the most diverse county in the world, or something in the country. There's like hundreds of languages spoken, and you learn, pretty quick that that's a good thing, and you just deal with it, and you kind of got to get along, so I also witnessed actually early in my life that kind of pitting on especially Black and Asian, and sometimes the system is set up to pit us against each other, and that's something that I'm actually super conscious of. I've always been super conscious of, and I always said that's a false dichotomy. That's not something that is good for any community. And it's kind of like, I don't know. Again, it was just sort of like making us fight for economic scraps, and all these situations were like in Crown Heights, and there were Korean businesses and Black customers fighting each other. And that's because we were being put in a situation that we're fighting over scraps, and other people were just happy watching us fight over it. And obviously, it was very formative. But, when I'm a senior in high school, I'm watching the LA riots on TV. Like, the Knicks were in the championship, almost won. And then all of a sudden they cut out, and it's like, whatever.
Hey, hold up. Soo, hold up. They didn't almost win. My Rockets handle their business. So now I know you Brooklyn, but I need you to understand, I'm born and raised in Houston, so y'all didn't almost win, but you probably still mad John the Starks kept shooting the bricks. Oh my gosh, I really am, and I still remember all that, like sort of like seared in my memory, and again, it took me a little while to process that, Randy, and I realized later that it was a setup, and so. Look, that's why I've been working on, again, we've been doing this work for over a decade, because we have a company that has the ability to change companies. And we start by changing the tops of the companies, but we try to make sure that gets radiated down. It's actually super important. At TEGNA, it's even actually more important because, again, in order for this company to actually evolve, it's got to meet its audiences and where they are. And where they are is not necessarily waiting at home 11 p.m. for the news. You know what I mean? Like, and because by the way, news is more important than ever. It's just they don't consume it in this way anymore. Yep. And so we need to go and change the way we program, the way we schedule, and who are actually bringing this news to people. And I think that in the changing of things, the new order won't look exactly like the old order. And that's the change that we represent. And that's why I'm so confident that, when I say, well, actually, I think I do represent the right kind of minority, because I think I understand all the challenges that we all have here.
a pathway to actually make that, to change it over time. And again, this is not about just a few hires. This is about actually changing the production process, frankly, these TV platforms are still relevant. They still, command audiences and, have loud voice, loud voices, not as loud as they used to be, but more than enough to make an impact. So I hope that answers that question, Randy, and I appreciate the sentiment.
What I was thinking, I'm sorry.
No, Randy, go ahead.
I was just saying what I was thinking when we were talking about, you talked about the Rodney King, the riots that happened, and that certainly created division, which was very much pushed by the media and the intent to create division. Because if you look back, the majority of people who were arrested during those riots were actually not Black Americans. We're talking about Korean-owned stores being looted and during these riots, and that created tensions. But if you look back at the records, there were not primarily Black Americans that were doing the looting. It was actually a lot of people from Central America. And then we go now to the last few years with COVID and the atrocities that were happening, the uptick in violence against Asian Americans. And for a while, they really were highlighting on the news when it was a Black American, although the majority of these crimes were not done by Black Americans. And so I just wonder if that's something that you'll be considering, the stories that you cover, the people that cover them, but how they're covered, because we definitely see the agenda that happens.
Oh, Randy, absolute. Now you're talking. You have to actually, it's not just changing one person. You have to change the process, the production, the entire, and to do that, you have, look, as a private company, with a change mandate, we can actually start to do that and evolve. And I think the business will react well to that. In the end, I think, even the people that are at the stations know that something's got to change, right? Because the same old thing is not going to keep working. And so, again, we're all going to be aligned to go where the audiences are. And I think that 100%, philosophically, I am so committed to not being divided. It's just something that is so deep ingrained. I've seen it. I know what forces are in play there, and it just won't happen. So that's why, we've been, again, when I think about how we're changing the companies that we're involved in to better reflect their communities. Look, I mean, the reality is, Asian Americans are only so much of a percentage of the whole country. Mm-hmm. Obviously, in New York City, the percentages are getting higher and higher, and in different communities, it changes. But so that's just not, it's not enough for me to just be focused on the Asian journey. It's never has been. I'm focused on the American journey. And that is one that I believe is, takes the best of everything that's in the world and is a big tent, and that's what makes us who we are. And that's, I'm optimistic about it. I'm optimistic.
Question from Michael. Michael?
Kim, congratulations. I hope your deal gets done as soon as possible.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. When you looked at historical deals by majority media companies, did they have to go through the same kind of level of scrutiny that you have to go through with issues that have to be alleviated, questions, or is it a complete level playing field? Everybody's asked the same questions and have to go through the same level of due diligence?
Look, Michael, I mean, I'm gonna look. We've been in the TV ownership space for over a decade, for 12 years actually. We've bought and sold, dozens and dozens of TV stations, and we currently own TV stations now. The current process that we're going through is definitely a higher level than we've been in the past. I don't actually know what's driving that. Obviously, we've seen some of these negative commentary. There could be some, I don't know, maybe some wrong political pressure. Look, I want to say that I do have faith in the system. I don't want to, I know the regulators have an important job to vet all concerns and what petitioners are saying. You probably want to ask somebody else that has expertise in the space or experience, like, have we been treated the same as everyone else? And because I feel like if I say something, then people are like, oh, he's just a complainer, or like, he's trying to influence the process that's going on now. So the answer is, all I've asked is to be treated like everybody else. In the end, I have faith that we will.
Mustafa.
Thank you and good luck.
Mustafa.
Thank you,
Mr. Kim, I used to actually help lead a federal agency. So my comment is that it's very rare to see someone have to go through like 3 comment periods and those types of things. My question for you, and I have a whole bunch of them, but I'll just lead with this one. How will young people play a role in the vision that you have moving forward if you're successful?
That's a great question. Okay, look, okay. So first of all, just going back to the agency question, look, we're going through the comment period again for the 3rd time. I can't recall a deal that has ever had more than 1 comment period. But again, I'm not complaining. I just wanted to make the observation that it may not exactly be the same. In terms of young people, that is, you're hitting the nail on the head in terms of why the business needs to change and go where the audience is. Young people, they're actually now more than, there are more people that never paid for TV than paid for TV. And by the way, that's how it was when I grew up. I never had cable TV, but right. Again, for the last, from 1990 to now, it's just the way the market forces work.
Everybody forgot there used to be a time when there was free television.
Absolutely.
And free TV television that didn't require you to get an antenna, a broadcast antenna, and all kind of other stuff. I mean, there was a time.
Right. And in some ways, it's very interesting because if you think about all the internet, what the great thing about social media is that it is, in some ways, again, I'm going to caveat that and come back to it. It's this great democratizer that the whole audience, you can post anything, people can find each other. And so that, it has some real, some real benefits, I think the problem, though, I think there are some real problems with social media. For example, they call it like Facebook News or Apple News, and I don't want to begrudge any of these companies because they do, wonderful things, but there is neither Facebook or Apple has a news desk and pays journalists. They don't pay journalists. They don't pay editors. They're not publishers.
Well, in fact, I can tell you this, Sue, without a doubt. We are being currently throttled by Facebook. I have 1.3 million followers on Facebook. And when we launched Roland Martin Unfiltered, we used to, after a 2-hour show, we may have anywhere from 45 to 75,000 views. We would have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people watching at one time. I remember one time we ran a panel Jane Elliott and I did, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and there were 10,000 people who were watching live. Right now, if I pull it up right now, I can guarantee you there's not more than 230 people watching. I've had 2 Facebook execs tell me that, there's a glitch in our system. And no one wants to answer to me what's the glitch, but it's no doubt that they are purposely throttling our audience because they want me to pay to boost to the people who already follow me, who already, my followers tell me they don't even get their notifications even though they checked it. That's the games that they also play.
Well, yeah. So there's actually 2 parts to that I want to unpack. First is, look, we live in a world where I'm told 78 people are watching us on Facebook, but I got 1.3 million followers, yet 2,000 are watching on YouTube right now. I have 980,000 subscribers.
Go ahead.
Right. Look, absolutely. Look, Roland, that is the problem with our current generation of technology, which is great. There are some serious problems. The first one, by the way, is that it depends solely on all of us content creators, whether it's your daughter dancing, making up a dance and putting it up and then, getting billions and billions of views, but maybe not getting paid for it, by the way,
Yep.
all of our content, when we upload it, that's our pictures, our baby pictures, all that stuff belongs to the platform, which is nuts, like we're taking all of our property. That's our property as content creators and content owners and rights holders, and uploading it onto a platform to reach an audience because we have to, because that's where the audience is. And yet we don't own any of it. They might deign to give you a little piece of it back to you, which is something that you already own. So that's number one. Number two is actually more insidious, which is what you're talking about, which is not only, do they not pay you for your content, but more importantly, they decide who gets watched, That's right. And even though they say they don't do it, they say that, oh, we're a publisher, we're not a platform. We're a platform, not a publisher. We're a dumb pipe, but that's not true. If the pipe can point to who's going to get the pipe, then it's not dumb at all. It's actually very intelligent. It's very smart. And if voices are being demonetized and throttled, and that's crazy. And that's not a world. So actually, to go back to that point that you raised, like, well, what's the impact of our deal to young people? We believe that actually that, the tenets of local news, which is live, which is local news content generation, we could actually, and again, we could bring that to this current generation because news is more important and more relevant than ever. We just have to figure out a way to deliver it, not only on air, which is still relevant, and not only at 6 p.m. and 11 p.m., but also digitally through the phones where people are. We need to, so that's number one, is to reach audiences where they are. And then number two is reach audiences with the content that they want. So, what we're going to do is encourage people to create content for us. So not only are we going to we obviously are employing, journalists and editors, but we're also going to, have more people able to access both the airwaves and the internet for this content that people want so badly, which is local, relevant local content for their and local community content. And I think that's going to. I think we're going to offer it's an old company, in some ways an analog company that's going to offer a future that's a little bit brighter than our current digital future. Again, the current digital future is that these 5 monster platform companies take it all.
Yep.
We put all our content up there, all the audiences on the other side. The audience has to watch ads and pay subscription fees, and then gets told what to watch. And the content creators might get a little piece of a fund.
Yep.
That is just not the future. That cannot be our American media future. The next generation will be a fairer system. And since we need to change anyway, we're an analog company, television is, we need to go to an evolution. Let's just skip past Facebook. Let's go skip past this current generation and to a new one that uses both the airwaves and your phone to get you the local content that you want. And I think that that's going to be done in a much more inclusive way, where there's going to be more voices, more local variety voices, not just a couple of people reading news on the desk.
Well,
I think that there's, yeah.
Well, what you just described is exactly why I created this show, September 2018, why I created the Black Star Network, September 2021, because, and people, and like literally, even the folks at YouTube told me, oh yeah, sorry, Roland, but black folks don't watch news. I said, I'm going to show you. And I said, trust me, they do. And like literally, they were like, yeah, we're funding other stuff, but yeah. And I said, okay, I'm going to show you. And we proved it. and we continue to prove it, and we continue to show, no, there's high quality content that doesn't have to go through the other gatekeepers. And so all of this is important because we've got to have diverse voices who are owning, because when you own, you make the decisions, and you're not, and you're not asking permission.
Exactly, and you can magnify, you could be include. Yeah, it's just, there's just more we can do.
Yes, sir.
And I'm excited. Look, again, I'm optimistic for the future. We've been through a lot, but look, we've met every objector. We've addressed their concerns. And there's real economic, cost of doing so. But we're happy to do it because we know the future is bright. We know the opportunity is so large because the current business needs to be changed.
All right, Soo Kim, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot. We'll be tracking this decision by the federal government as it unfolds.
Thank you, sir. Thank you again.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.